Lots of sunlight today, and they say it's actually going to be like this for the next couple of days. Maybe I'll try to get some, I guess, higher elevated heights. I gotta do a little trekking, I guess. And what I read today. How about this one, where when it comes to drones and people using it, let's just say for military purposes, people are trying to find ways to take it down. Look at this thing. This one here, it says, China developed new anti-drone missile system. China has developed a new anti-aircraft missile and cannon system known as the WS-3 air defense missile system, specifically designed to combat drones. As our news reports, the WS-3 complex can be mounted on armored vehicles with 6x6 and 4x4 wheel configurations, providing excellent mobility across various terrains. The system's arsenal includes two 35mm automatic cannons and surface-to-air missiles. In addition to drones, the WS-3 is capable of engaging cruise missiles, precision-guided munitions, and other low-flying aerial threats, making it a versatile asset for modern air defense. Well, I'm sure that's the case. How much does that cost to fire like a missile, for example? If you're just trying to take out, let's just say, like a small drone, for example. It says, equipped with an advanced radar station and an optical electronic target acquisition system, the WS-3 can detect and track targets with high precision. It can operate both autonomously and as an integrated part of a layered air defense network, enhancing overall battlefield awareness and response speed. The WS-3 represents China's growing focus on countering emerging drone threats, reflecting a global trend where unmanned aerial vehicles are increasingly used in both reconnaissance and combat roles. Its combination of rapid-fire cannons and missiles ensures a multi-layered defense capability capable of neutralizing swarms of drones and sophisticated aerial attacks. It's kind of interesting too because they are leading in terms of things like recreational and commercial drones in general. So they probably have a lot of resources to do testing too in these regards. And I guess in terms of detecting things in the air, this was kind of interesting, where apparently here in Canada, there's been a big issue with NAV Canada where they say they're understaffed, and because of that, planes are constantly being delayed. And there was apparently a pilot on Air Canada that told everyone on the speaker, I guess, his frustration was kind of interesting. This one says, frustrated Air Canada pilot slams air traffic controller shortage to passengers on flight. Air Canada pilot vented his frustrations over air traffic controller shortages on a recent flight, telling passengers to write to their MPs to address ongoing delays at the country's airports. The pilot on a Vancouver-Montreal flight on Saturday vented over the intercom, with a CBC reporter capturing a portion of his message announcing a 50-minute delay. In the message, he says that the air traffic controller sector, which is operated by a private company, NAV Canada, was understaffed and sick calls had meant there was a holdup at the airport that day. Saying, quote, "It's very annoying," the pilot told the passengers. "It cost the company a lot of money, it cost business people a lot of money, and it would be great to have this addressed." So it's kind of interesting too, because according to this, the pilot is alleging that NAV Canada is intentionally keeping the staff, I guess, low because they want to get more overtime, like for the people that are there. So you can hear some of the conversation, I guess, that was recorded.
Since we got the time, if you want to write a letter to your MP and tell them what's going on, maybe they could address this problem. We believe that there's a lot of evidence that the people in charge of air traffic control, NAV Canada, are keeping, like the air traffic controllers are keeping the numbers low to keep the overtime up.
And this makes me think too, for example, as you know, when it comes to things like drones, you have to go through NAV Canada and all that. They treat this whole thing as if you're flying like an airplane every single time. So can you imagine all those times where, like for myself, I'm just flying, for example, up and down, I'm below the tree line or a building. There should be absolutely no airplanes there, but you have to constantly nag them, for example, to approve this and that. And with things like drones, there's thousands of more people. Can you see how that will actually clog up the system as well? Wasting everyone's time for people doing something that's so simple. I mean, imagine if you had to do something like this for the road here, where you have thousands of cars every day and they force you to go through some organization to get, quote, approval to drive, and they're understaffed. Then imagine somebody had a great idea saying, hey, because pedestrians, bicycle riders, people on skateboards, they use the road and stuff too, let's make them go through the whole process. And now you have what, thousands and millions of extra requests that they have to deal with. Like you would say there, wait, that doesn't make sense, correct? Well, that's kind of how I would imagine it is too, now that they introduce things like drones as well in that category. But the thing is too, a lot of people think it makes sense in that way, even though it doesn't. That's just the way it is currently, huh? And this is kind of an interesting, I guess, piece in terms of that argument in places like the UK, where they want to make it so that AI companies could pretty much use any information or material that they want that's public information to train their AI platforms, for example. And if you don't want them to do it, you're going to have to opt out. And one argument was apparently if companies can't do that, they'll essentially go, let's just say, bankrupt, which is kind of interesting to think about. As it says here, former Meta executive warns against artist demands for AI copyright laws. During a recent interview with the Times London Clegg, the former UK Deputy Prime Minister engaged in a heated debate over AI copyright laws. Clegg argued that the demands of the artists and prominent creative figures to require tech firms to seek permission before using copyrighted materials to train AI models are unworkable and implausible. He continued to point out that AI systems have already used a significant portion of the data readily available online. The former UK Deputy Prime Minister suggested that people should have a straightforward way to opt out of using their content. He viewed the idea of AI companies having to seek permission as something that collides with the physics of the technology itself. He added that the idea would kill the UK's AI industry overnight if applied in the UK alone. So that's interesting to think about, as a lot of people would argue where if it's public information anyways, it's no different than a person reading a material, learning from it, and then using that knowledge to, let's say, create something else. But at the same time, I guess the argument creatively, it's kind of like a movie as an example. If you literally took the life of somebody or their story, you could actually get into legal trouble, where if all you did was replace the person's name, but you copied everything exactly to the T of their experience and made it into a movie, you could actually get in trouble for that. On the other hand, if you were doing it more as, let's just say, a documentary, like you were reporting on the matter, then that's completely different. So that's kind of the debate in my mind anyways. Do you get like a free pass if you're using AI in these ways to generate art, voices, like you literally are using aspects of someone else's work to do that, versus just training the AI in general to be able to do general stuff? When it comes to AI and so forth, I'm not sure how that's possible, because it has to have a basis of sort in terms of someone's work or whatever, literally, to do that. I think this is a fair question too with this topic anyways. Let's just say you are the AI company and you need material to train on. What happens if you just hire literally your own employees? They'll do the writing, they'll do the singing or whatever it may be, the filming, and because you hired them as an employee to create that work, you can then train your AI based on that. So wouldn't that satisfy, I guess, the argument there where you have to use, I guess, someone else's work? Because in any other aspect of the creative life, in that regards, you are actually going to have to in some way recognize or compensate. Let's just say the person, if you're explicitly using their work in that way. Because there, the only argument I can think of is it'll just take way too long. Like years and years, for example, for you to hire all these people to do all their own creative work and all that, for you to train your AI, which in that sense, I don't think that's a proper argument in this context, saying just because it takes you longer. Now you can argue, from what I'm reading here, people will say, well, if you don't allow us to do it, like let's just say in a certain country, then other countries where the laws are so lax, they're gonna be so far ahead. I guess that's true too, but at the same time, that kind of evades the topic. Can you actually do it as well, like in that regard, just hiring your own workers and stuff to do that? Because to me, ultimately, the reasoning for it is it's just a shortcut. All right, see you guys later.